Welcome back, my friends. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. I have my friend James Robbins on. We're going to talk about climbing, leadership, change. But before we do that, James, I've got a question. When men are wanting to level up their life, and what are they doing wrong, or where are they getting their information from that's wrong, and maybe they should be looking somewhere else?
I think the challenge today is there's so many people that are giving their opinions online that it can seem so contrary and like, who do you listen to? But the reality is, you probably need to tune inward and listen to yourself and figure out what you need to do. There's incredible wisdom inside of us if we just want to step back and listen to it.
That's awesome. And you are online, so if they're not listening to themselves, why? I know we're going to talk about your book, The Call to Climb. But where did you come from? Why did you write this book? What could guys get from you?
I grew up on a small cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. So it was kind of the rough and tumble place to grow up. At the same time, I was this redheaded, shy, introverted kid, and I was like the only redhead in my whole town. So I grew up with all these insecurities as well. When I came out of college, I ended up going into ministry, which was a total surprise to me. That was never on my list of things I might do. Led me into eventually creating my leadership development company. So I think I've just spent decades now in the trenches, whether it's working with men, working with leaders, working with companies to help their leaders get better. And at the end of the day, every problem in the world is a leadership problem. And the same can be said about families. Any problem in a family is a leadership problem. And it doesn't mean that to say that the leader's to blame, but it's just that leaders always can figure out the solution and what they need to do next.
Yeah, I think like I'm a big believer like the extreme ownership side. I'm a fireman and I'm a captain, so I'm in charge. I've seen my guys do dumb things before, and I'm just like, why did you do that? And I have to look back like, what made them comfortable doing that? What education or training have I not done? And it really has changed my outlook on just helping guys. If I can always put it back on myself from a leadership standpoint, when they failed because I failed to do something else, and I think that that's a really important insight that we have that inside of us as the leaders of our family, the leaders at work, that we should be making the changes and taking that responsibility. So in your book, you didn't write a self-help book, right? You told a story. Why did you pick telling a story over just the normal like do this, do this, do this?
Well, before I ever went into ministry, my dream career, I wanted to become a film director and I wanted to make movies. That's what I wanted to do with my life. Story has always been something to me that I've loved. And then, my career turned into thousands of times on stage. And I learned quickly that when you learn to tell stories, it gets people's attention and it is bar none, by far the most effective communication means. But the story and the call to climb, I mean, so much of that came out of my own life and my own struggles, especially in midlife, around my mid 30s. And my first book was a leadership book that's more prescriptive, like it's a framework, do this, here's these 5 things. But this book, I wanted to be different. And I just got the idea of, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody was summoned to call this mountain because they need to have a conversation with their soul. And it's this special place where you can't get away, you can't run, you can't hide, you can't escape. You've got to just listen to what your soul is trying to tell you. So, that combined with my love of the mountains, my experience in climbing, it just all came together.
I like the fact that you picked the mountain as I don't know, adversary is not the right word, but the challenge, right? Because the outdoors in general, it's the ultimate, like you can't fake it. We talked before we hit record. I've climbed this big mountain called Aconcagua. It was 23,000 feet. You were telling me you climbed one of the tallest in Bolivia at what you said, 21,000 feet. You understand that you have to put your foot in front of nobody else is going to do that. You have to do that. And one of the things I like about the mountain is that the top is not the goal, right? Because you have to come down. That's really important, but it changes you, right? They know the every step you take, that when you don't feel like it, when you feel like garbage, when you're dehydrated and sunburned, every step you take getting to the top, that changes you. So when you come down to normal world, which we live in the valley, right? We live in the normal life. We don't get to live on the mountaintop. That really changes you. Do you see where like what has changed in your life as you've gone through the hard things that kind of motivated you to write this book? Like what did you go through that said, "Hey, now I'm changed. Now I'm a better person."
Well, first of all, about the climb, and to your point, mountains are humbling. And when I climbed Sahama, I tell this story often in my main keynote speech that I do, but we were heading up on the final day, right, for the summit day. And we left camp, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning, and one of the climbers, wasn't doing well, so they had to take him back down, and then there was only 3 of us left to go for the summit, and we're climbing, and one of the guys starts feeling like he can't do it, and of course, if he quits, it's over for all of us, so we gotta keep him going, right? So I start, turning into, like, motivator again, but maybe after a couple more hours, I started to get to the point where I was like, I wanna quit, like, I don't wanna do this, and I wanted to just get off the mountain. But I knew if I quit, it's over for everyone else. And I remember thinking, well, I don't want that on my resume. And then I came up with this brilliant idea. I thought, wait a minute, I don't need to quit to get off this mountain. I just need him to quit because if he quits, I get to go down. I mean, just that's how I was thinking. And it's so humbling. In the end, we made it to the top because of a brilliant guide that knew the mountains. But that's what I mean when I say mountains humble us because and a mountain doesn't have to be a physical mountain. It's just anything that's really hard, like doing hard things that pushes you to that limit where you feel like I can't do this anymore, like I want to quit. And if you do quit, there's a lesson in that. And if you don't quit, there's a lesson in that. Like regardless, there's a lesson. And to your point, yeah, we always come back to the village. We always come back to base camp, but base camp looks completely different after having ascended, up the peak. So that's what I love about it. The book came from a time in my life. I was in my mid 30s. This is when I was in ministry and I started to just feel really unhappy. And I felt guilty that I felt unhappy. I was like, because you're like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to quit. But you feel like you can't quit on God. Like it's just a really heavy feeling. And even I had a boss that said, you can't quit. Like you can't quit ministry. And it's like the gangs, right? Like you once in, you can't get out.
Right? You got
And I
branded.
just felt so trapped in that. And it was during that time that I I experienced my first round of burnout where just my body got so tired and shut down. And I stumbled across a book from Dr. James Hollis. He's a Jungian psychoanalyst. It's called Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. Brilliant book. He's a brilliant writer. But he talked in there about how at some point your soul seeks to have a conversation with you. And it does that through those nudgings in life, right? Like that driving home in rush hour and you just have that moment where you're like, wait, like, is this my life? Something's not adding up here. And it's that nudges of the soul that goes on week after week after week. But most people avoid the appointment, avoid that summons. And that was a summons for me at that time in my life to stop and go, "Wait a minute, like, what are you doing? And if you're not happy here, you can do something else." And that's a whole nother discussion in itself, right? Like, having the courage to actually live your life and chart your own path. So, that's how the book got that's where the idea for the book came was partly through Hollis's work, partly my own burnout, and then thinking, wouldn't this be great if there was a story about someone who actually was truly called to climb?
Yeah. One thing I want to pull out from what you said that, you didn't want to climb or you didn't want to quit your climb because that would lead to the failure of your friends. Where do you see other people being in your life and strategically, putting people in your life to go, to do life with, friends and mentors? How has that affected your life? How has having people in your life that rely on you kind of maybe pushed you further than you thought that you could go?
Yeah, I talk about like having your rope team. So if you think about it, there are, we all are surrounded by people, friends, different levels of friendships. But there's a level of friends that they're the ones who, I don't know, not to be dark, but let's say you died. They're the ones who leave their vacation early to fly back to be at your funeral. And that's a small group, right? That's a really small group. But who is that? Apart from family, who is that? And to me, those are those cherished relationships that you have got to hold on to throughout your life and be an asset on rope. Like you remember being on Aconcagua, I'm sure there were sections where you were roped. Maybe you weren't, but when you're physically on a rope team on a mountain, it really shifts how you think about about at least even teams, because once you're roped together, you realize like I'm not my own anymore. Like everything I do impacts all the other people on this rope right here. So I gotta pay attention to that. And the same thing with those closest people around us that are going to be there through thick and thin. I lean on my friends in tough times, but then I also have to ask the question, am I consistently checking in with them? Am I an asset to them? And that's different than the sort of pockets that we might find from time to time that help us in a certain segment of life. So let's say you're an entrepreneur and maybe you join a mastermind and you find a group of people that are really thinking big, and that's a great group to climb with in those moments. But that group may only climb with you for so long until you leave that mastermind and then you move to another city and there's a new group. That's life. But there's a core set of people that you will find remain kind of in your, what I say, your rope team throughout your life. And those are treasures, those relationships.
For sure. It's when I climbed Mount Rainier, and it was the first mountain. There was two other guys I climbed with. We met in a class in Washington. Then we went to Ecuador. Then we went to Argentina, and we had guides in all those places. Well, we wanted to do it by ourselves, so we went to Mount Rainier. And my buddy Brad, he actually didn't summit Aconcagua. He quit. But we had an extra guide, so me and my other buddy Steve were able to go, and we were on Mount Rainier, and I remember a moment he was on the lead, and we were in a very dangerous spot, and I'm like, "Brad, we gotta go. We gotta move through this spot." He's like, "I can't." He just froze on this mountain. He literally wouldn't move. I'm like, "Brad, there's a spot, the route is to the left, then you're gonna go up to the right past that boulder. We have to move. We have to go." And he stopped. He just literally froze up, and I remember running past him to show him, which way we go. And we're carrying our pack to base camp. So I probably had 70 pounds on. I got to the top and I was in the best shape of my life. And I thought I was going to die. I was like breathing so hard. And I remember at that moment going, I will never climb with Brad again. I couldn't take that risk because I was tied to him, right? Like you said, like I think sometimes in our life, we have people that we've acquired, and sometimes we got to unclip the rope too. I just can't, this person is no longer helping me. I can't influence them. They're influencing me and they're literally going to pull me into a crevasse. Uh, I think that's important that we are always looking like, where are the people that I'm around? Where are they taking me? And the mountains are a really good place to help figure that out. Something you
Yeah.
talk about a lot in the book is this a long held belief. Something that's like the hidden programming. Could you discuss what that is and how that could be holding people back?
Yeah. I was, I started journaling, I don't know, decade ago, more than that. I was journaling and I used this app. And then maybe 7 years into journaling, they released a new, update where when you logged on, it would say, "Hey, you have 5 other entries on this day from previous years. You wanna read them?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that would be cool." So I would go in, it's like October 31st, and what did I write, last year, the year before? So I'd start reading them, but it was really spooky because it was like, "Wait a minute, that seems so similar to what I just wrote today." Like, same thoughts, same moods, same struggles, same fears, same anxieties, and some of them were so close, I would copy and paste them, and I would send them to friends. I'm like, "Hey, check this out. Like, isn't this weird? Like, I wrote this on this day, but in previous years." And they would go, "Yeah, that is weird." And the more I began to check back, the more I started to see, wait a minute, my life is actually just repeating. For as much as I'm trying to grow and I have goals, and every January 1st, like here's my goal list, and then I'm falling short. And I just saw, wow, I'm in like this massive orbit. It's like the like the earth going around the sun. It's just, it takes so long to get around. You don't notice that you've been there before. And then it hit me, if my past keeps repeating, then I can predict my future. And it's just more of this. And that led me into what's driving this, because it's not me, because I don't want this. And that's when I started to understand more about the power of the programming that is in us, mostly from our little life, right? Mostly from when we were kids, but some along the way. But that programming absolutely shapes how we see ourselves and shapes how we see the world, and that's just like putting on a pair of glasses. And those glasses will limit you or they will expand you. The key thing is starting to get aware of what they are so that you can begin to live more intentionally. Because if you don't know what they are, like what is unconscious rules us. Like what is unconscious rules you. In other words, it's there's something else running your life. As Dr. Hollis puts it, a shadow government or a deep state that's actually running who you are. And until you get intentional about, wait a minute, why am I always going right or going left or whichever? Um, and is that where I want to go? And then catching those and starting to be intentional about, wait a minute, I'm going to make different decisions, which often means anxiety and fear and pushing against the boundaries of your comfort zone.
That's cool. Would you be interested, as being a pastor is helping me, I'm gonna give you something that I think I've realized is a limiting belief in my life, and maybe you could walk me through the steps of changing that or however that would work. Does that sound cool?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I've had this podcast for 2 years, almost 2 years and 3 months now, I think. It's growing. I'm going up the charts, but in my head, I'm a fireman, and I've never really done business. I've never grown a platform. And I realized that I would like this to be something more. I would like to, maybe speak on stages like you do, or have something, maybe write a book. But I do realize that as I look back, yeah, I'm a fireman, and this is fun. I enjoy doing this. It's awesome to get to talk to cool people. But I would like to do more. But I realize that I haven't. I've just keep doing the same things. How do I break out of that mindset and then take it to the next level?
So just to be clear, you're wanting to take your show, your career, that part of your creativity that's coming out here, and you want to take that to the next level, meaning speaking on stages, having your show be bigger.
Yeah, just I think influencing more people, helping more people. I think what I have to say is important, and I would like to say it to more people. Whether that looks like, like a speaking on a stage or writing a book or just increasing the platform on YouTube, whatever that. I guess that's the weird. I don't know what would be next. I don't know like the actions to take to get there because I know how to put fires out. So I'm always going back to like, well, I'm good at that. I don't know if I'm good at this yet. So yeah, that's what I want to do more in this realm of helping men become better husbands, fathers, and leaders.
Gotcha. I can relate with that because when I first started speaking in the corporate world, there was a big insecurity there. Like, but who's going to listen to me? I'm just a pastor. I'm just a minister. And so what happens is you end up creating part of your identity out of your career, right? Hey, I'm just a fireman. And so that means something. Well, it means a lot of positive things in the community. It means a lot of, you can save lives and put out fires, but then what value does that have in the world of podcasts or speaking? And so that's what trips us up is because if we marry too much of our identity to a vocation, because you're so much more than the name fireman. So
Right.
when you think about it in this way, Danny, is that a lot of people they want to find their purpose in life. And out of that, they're looking at what's the job I'm supposed to do, right? What's my purpose in life? But your purpose in life isn't a job per se. It's really to bring the authentic, most honest version of you to this world, like to let your soul express itself through all of who you've been, who you've become. And you're doing that already, right? As you have this podcast. You've already, I mean, how many are you a fire chief? Is that what you said? Yeah. So how
Yeah.
many people in your shoes have started a podcast? I'm sure a couple, but
Yeah.
probably not a lot. But the reason you've done that is it's not because you're a fireman, it's because you're Danny and your soul has this desire to express itself. And this is just in one of the ways it does it. So if you look at it like this, if you track down on like let's say the limiting belief might be, well, what does a fireman know about launching a podcast? What does a fireman know about speaking on stage? But here's the thing, it's like that belief how does that belief limit you? when you think about that. Like, if I'm somehow handicapped because I'm a fireman, how does that belief make you feel?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I really like what I do, and it's almost like I just don't know what else. I don't know the next steps because I'm very good at what I do now, and I know the order of things. It's like, well, what does it mean to what does it? I couldn't even tell you exactly what the next level would actually look like. Does it mean I get 1,000 downloads on this podcast? I don't know what that is. And I think that's maybe the hard part is like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And that's and maybe, and I feel like if I didn't have that limiting belief, I'm like, oh yeah, obviously the next step is this, this, and this, but that's not really how life works, right? You just open a door and you keep walking through these open doors as life goes. So I guess I don't know. That's the hard part.
Well, there's a difference between a knowledge gap and then a belief, right? Like, you've accomplished harder things than figuring out the next step on this new road that you're on with podcasting. Like, the fact that you've learned to fight fires, the fact that you've learned all of these things, and now when you go into a situation that's potentially dangerous, like, you're able to see all these things, whereas I would be going in there like I have no idea the next step, but you've just learned those things. So it's one thing for a knowledge gap. It's another thing if you feel like, well, I can't do that because, I'm just this. Well, then that is just a limiting belief about identity. But the reality is, you just look back to the evidence in your own life as a person, you have figured things out, and you'll figure this out as well. There's going to be a lot of people even that can try to tell you, "Oh, you got to take this path, Danny," and someone else is, no, you got to take this path. It's great to learn all those things, but at the end of the day, when you sit with it, you're going to know what's the next step for you.
Yeah.
And it's just like a mountain, right? You're going to take the step. And sometimes you take the wrong step, but that's okay. Then, hey, we recover. So much of being an entrepreneur or just life in general comes back down to a core belief just in me. Hey, I believe in me. That's sometimes a mantra I use for myself when I feel stuck or I feel overwhelmed or I feel like, what should I be doing in business? Do I need to pivot? The economy is really slow right now. But I believe in me. People aren't buying, and corporates holding cash. Okay, that might be true, but I believe in me. I just believe in me to figure it out. And then I do. And you're no different in that, right?
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of guys in general, they have a track, and a lot of it probably came from their dads or the men in their life, and that was either really good or really bad, right? Like, man, all I know is my dad was an alcoholic, and he beat my mom up, and I don't want to go that way, but I'm afraid I will because that's all I know. And I do think that you have to have a little bit of the self confidence to go, well, I'm not my dad, for good or for bad, right? I have the ability to step out, and I think that is really powerful. That you have the ability to change. You're not predestined to be anything other than decisions you make. I think that's pretty powerful.
You know those have you ever seen those mosaics? It's like it looks like a photo of someone's face, but then you zoom in and it's made up of like 1,000
Yeah,
small photos
yeah,
of them, but it's just the way they've arranged it. So our identity is a little bit like that. Like, if you stand far back, you see us, but then you zoom in and it's 1,000 of these different picture tiles, all which represent these stories that make up our life. It's actually stories that we have tagged with meaning. So, for example, we might say, hey, my dad was an alcoholic. We might say, I was born on a cattle ranch. I was an introvert. I was a redhead. All these things are fine. They're just data points, right? But it's the meaning that then we attach to that. So someone might say, well, I'm an introvert. That's why I suck at sales versus, well, I'm an introvert. That's why I'm actually so good at one-on-one conversations. It's the meaning that we're going to give to that picture tile. It's almost like, and it can be an empowering meaning or a disempowering meaning. So imagine a disempowering story. It's almost like that picture tile is black and white, but
yeah,
we have the ability to flip it to the color side. Like I'm a I grew up on a cattle ranch, which is why I feel like I'm not sophisticated. Or I grew up on a cattle ranch, which is that's why I understand hard work. Right? One's more empowering than the other. What happens is we just subconsciously we have all these stories that take place, But as we examine them, and to your point, as we examine them, that's when we realize, wait a minute, I'm the one that flips the tile.
Right.
I'm the one that gets to say what this means. Hey, I'm an immigrant, which is why I don't have the same opportunities as everyone else. Hey, I'm an immigrant, which is why I have an advantage because I work my tail off. Whatever you believe about yourself is going to be true. And so you might as well choose empowering beliefs.
No, I think yeah, that's awesome. And that's kind of what the book is about, right? Doing hard things, work, putting in the work, and then realizing that you have the ability to step within and climb through these challenges. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the book so much is that it's about understanding that, hey, are you actually living the life you're supposed to live, the life you've been called to live? And if not, just understand why. It's because there's all these programming that gets in the way. We don't want to upset the tribe. We don't want to go against, people's opinions. And all this is just this programming. And but when we start to see that, and we start to see the matrix, because it's like that matrix is the enemy at times. We start to see that now I can start to make a better decision based on what is it that I really want. And that's where it all begins, is just with that question, what do you want? Like, what do you want in life? And a lot of people can't answer that question. They struggle with that question, either because they don't know themselves well enough,
Right.
or they know what they want, but they feel like either they don't deserve to have it, that it would be selfish, or that it would be way out of reach. And so why try? And so we just stop dreaming and plug ourselves back into the matrix.
How do you think someone kind of gets out of their head and learns to know themselves? What does how do because it is easy to go to work, come home, go to work, you're like you said, that year is just repeating and you don't realize it till you look back and go, man, I am in the same exact spot. I'm writing the same journal entry 5 times for every October 30th. Like how do you step out?
You need to create separation points. And when I say that is like you need to be able to pull out from life on a regular basis. That can be as simple as meditation, is setting aside time aside for meditation, reflection, journaling. For me, it's getting out in nature. But when you have that as part of your schedule, so let's say you have a 15-minute block in the morning that either going to meditate or you're going to reflect. Well, if I've got that blocked, now I can take time and I can go back to yesterday going, why was I so triggered when I went to hang out with the guys and this one guy said this and then I got defensive? Why did I do that? Right? Because that's not me, that's not who I wanna be, but there's something there, and that gives me a chance then to go, "What was it really that was going on there?" And as I begin to uncover some of these programs that are driving it, I can go, "Okay, but that's not how I want to live, so let me make a better decision." That's how we get to know ourselves. So knowing ourselves is just it's knowing the good and the bad, right? Like, knowing your shadow, knowing your blind spots, knowing and not judging that. Okay, this is who I am. It's not an excuse. Doesn't mean I have to stay here. But the more we understand ourselves, and this especially is true for people who are leaders, anybody who's a father, right? Like it's knowing yourself that helps you evolve as a leader so that you can have more impact.
Yeah. I think that getting away is really important. I do 3 things. In the springtime, I go turkey hunting. In the fall, I go deer hunting, and then on a weekly basis, I try to go for a ruck. That's my, like, workout of choice. Put a heavy backpack on and walk, and a lot of times I'll listen to music or podcast, but sometimes I'm like, "You know what? Today, the earpods go in my pocket," and just the steady movement, I think, really does like, I come back and I'm like, I know what I'm gonna do. Like I have reset, and I think that's pretty cool. But James, this has been a great conversation. Is there a question I didn't ask you about the book, about what you're doing, about something you'd like to share with the guys?
I don't think there's a question that I'm waiting for you to ask that you didn't ask. When I spent a lot of years working in ministry, one of the things you have to do besides weddings is funerals. And that's, not a fun part of the job. But I had an interesting insight from seeing so many funerals, doing so many funerals. And it's that everybody gathers together and funerals sort of have a kind of a template that they follow. But part of that template is someone gets up front and they're going to read your eulogy. And your eulogy is basically a list of kind of all the things you did in life. and it takes like 2 minutes. And the rest of the time is spent with people getting up and talking about who you were to them and what you meant and how much you inspired them and how much they're gonna miss you. And I thought, "Isn't that interesting?" We strive so hard for that 2 minutes to build that, and maybe we build it to a 2.5-minute read.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if that's our final curtain call kinda shows us what's really important, it really is the impact of those closest around us. And that's just a lesson I have to remember in myself all the time because I can get so, especially as men, you get so focused on what are we building? What's our profit? What's the next project? What's this? And then I got a daughter that's like, Dad, I just want more time. And I need that reminder every once in a while.
That's pretty awesome. We're gonna link to all your Instagram, YouTube, book, everything. Is there anything specific you'd like us to share with the?
The best way would be to go to the website, iwillclimb.com. Iwillclimb.com. If you go there, you can find all our socials and everything. Yeah, let me know that you saw me here on Danny's show.
Awesome. Well, the book is The Call to Climb. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast, and I'll talk to you later.